All right, welcome back to another episode of D2D Success Stories. Here today with Kyle Nielsen. Welcome, bro.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So we know each other from around a little bit, but I've worked with one of your main homies, Donnie.
Yep, love Donnie.
Yeah, had him on previously too. So anyway, let me kind of intro you a touch, just so that maybe if somebody listening hasn't heard of you, they know where we're going.
Yeah.
But then we'll jump back to the beginning. So, Senior President of Sales. Is
Yep.
that accurate way to say it? Cool.
President of Sales.
President of
Yeah.
Sales. Got you.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's four of you, right?
Yeah, so Tosh is our Senior President of Sales, more or less like a CRO type of position.
CRO,
and then me, Donnie, and Chase kind of operate as presidents in a few different roles.
Yeah.
And kind of stay in our specific lanes where our specialty exists, and then
Yes.
we overlap a little bit with stuff, and it's a pretty awesome team.
Nice. So the four of y'all, President of Sales at Aptive, I'm sure everybody listening knows Aptive. You guys are freaking huge. Been doing it a long time. Lots of professionalism. I've always admired that about Aptive. Like it's put together, man. It's put together. How big's the org these days?
Yes, this year on the sales side, I think we'll have about 1,800 reps, maybe even up to 2,000 reps this year that make a sale, and still scaling.
Love it. So big old huge org, and you've been in door to door for, we were talking about this, 17 years?
Yeah.
Love it. Cool, man. So let's go back kind of to the beginning. Tell us a little bit about growing up, where you're from, that type of stuff.
Yeah, so I grew up in San Bernardino, California, so Southern California. One of 6 kids. I'm the middle boy, 5 boys. Then my little sister was the last one to kind of come along.
Okay.
And so I kind of grew up in this environment where my dad owned a plumbing company and then sold it. Started working more as like a journeyman, foreman for another plumbing company and more construction, not house calls kind of stuff. So I spent a lot of my summers growing up digging ditches and trenching and cutting pipes and doing all that kind of physical labor to earn money. With being one of 6 kids, to have the pair of shoes I wanted for the next school year, or even a new backpack, or things if I didn't want the hand-me-downs or those kinds of things. Like I had to mow lawns, I had to sell, to play baseball, I had to sell the chocolates door to door, and all that kind of stuff.
So you guys were working class.
Yeah, very very working class. I mean, blessed, great family. I mean, both my mom and dad, they were involved in our lives. Like blessed to be where I was. But yeah, I kind of always had sold things and kind of hustled out of necessity.
Right.
And I never even really it wasn't until I had a chance to get into sales, fast forward a lot of years, that I was like, I'm a salesman and I'm pretty dang good at it, You
don't even realize it, right? I forget who was talking about it. Some guy on the internet recently was going ham on this concept of being resourceful. That was like his big catchphrase, right?
Yeah.
Certain little ways you grow up, you just kind of become more resourceful than maybe you would have otherwise been. And I think that's the salesman in you, right? So cool, man. So you grow up, high school, are you, what'd you do? Like a sports kid?
Yeah,
or
I played water polo,
Yeah.
swam. I swam because I played water polo, not the other way around.
Yeah.
I loved the water polo sport. I hated swimming, just laps in the pool. But I knew that was, in the off season of water polo, I had to be keeping that up. Skateboarded, I was really involved in like the skateboard scene.
Okay.
Kind of late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
I was not good at it at all. I broke a lot of bones, had a lot of injuries, a lot of stitches, a lot of casts. But I loved that culture, and I loved, being around. And so,
I feel like it's back now.
It really is.
You've been seeing it, man.
Oh, it's so crazy.
Yeah.
And like you talked about resourceful.
Yeah.
Like all my friends were really good, and I had opportunities to be around a lot of really talented people. And so to still kind of be involved and still kind of not be outcast because I wasn't that good. I skateboarded different. I pushed different. I rode the board differently than most people did.
Like self-taught type of thing.
Yeah. And for those that are listening or watching that know skateboarding terms, like I rode goofy, pushed Mongo, which is like most people push and push with their back foot, and their back foot's where they need to be, so their front foot's always positioned where it needs to be for the tricks.
Yeah.
I pushed more with my front foot, and I'd have to place my front foot where it needed to be, like right before going off a ledge or right before stuff. And so like it wasn't placed right, you're falling, you're breaking bones. So I picked up a camera one day and was like, well, if I'm not going to be the guy that's being filmed, I might as well start making videos and making my friends skateboard videos. And me and a buddy started a little production company, and that kind of kept me involved in that scene and let me see the importance of documenting things, as well as, getting a few friends sponsored. And then that bled into high school projects and video projects and stuff. So that kind of had people like wanting to be on my team for different English projects.
It was like a superpower back in the day too. Like,
because it is so easy now with a phone.
Yeah.
You can do this, and even like you send it to an app and an app sends you back an edit.
Yeah.
Like it was
back in the day, 2000, man. Like if you have like one friend who knows how to do a little bit of stuff, they do something for you. It might even be low quality by today's standards, but we'd think that person was a magician for like getting us some pictures
and it took forever, dude. It took forever to get that kind of stuff done.
Yeah.
Back then. And so that's I did that kind of through high school. And then
you did like YouTube videos and stuff.
I was pre-YouTube, man. I graduated high school 2002. So I'm like, YouTube wasn't around until a little bit after that. Like I think 6, 7 is when it really started coming around, or 2006 ish. So I was pre-YouTube, pre-Twitter, pre-smartphones, like pre-Blackberries, like all of that. It was kind of blissful, because like you knew the people that knew how to get a hold of you were typically with you. You had to be home at a certain time. Like you had pay phones to check in on with your parents, and man, what a different world we live in now.
Kind of remember. Not super remember.
A little bit, but I'm pushing for it. I turn 40 next month. So
yeah, man. I'm 32 now. Cool, dude. So you graduate. What happens first?
So I graduate. I'm kind of figuring things out. I worked at a movie theater.
Yeah.
I was a manager there. Worked all through high school there, and then I got a job as a server at IHOP.
Yeah.
In the middle of not the best part of San Bernardino. So being a server at an IHOP, that was, you didn't really live off your tips, and you had to really work to like win the crowd over and stuff to sometimes even get the bill paid. Then I got a job as a medical records courier. So I worked for a local lab, like medical records chain, or a medical chain, transporting medical records and lab work and stuff between their branches. And
is IHOP 24-hour or just Denny's?
Yeah.
So did you do like overnighters over there?
Yeah. To put it in perspective, so the IHOP was here. Next door was a pawn shop. Across the street was a bail bonds place. Yeah. And like, just to kind of paint the picture of where it was. Like, so the crowd that came in was really, really fun. I loved it.
Yeah.
But the cool thing about any of these kinds of things, like where I grew up, how I grew up, the jobs that I had, it's always forced me to connect with people.
Right.
And in my opinion, to change the world, you have to understand the world, and to change people, you have to understand people. Yep. And so I've always just gravitated towards jobs that allowed me to connect with someone at some basic level. And whether it was the movie theater, getting them their popcorn and their drinks and talking about the movies and catching them on their way out, or as a server, you really have to connect with people, delivering medical charts to the nurses and the doctors and, all that kind of stuff. And then, moving on, like there's also always been connection. Yeah. And I've always really wanted just to understand people at a core level and try to understand behavior and understand people so I can help change and make the world better, Kind
of like makes you feel grounded, right?
Yeah.
If you get really senior and door to door, start making really good money, maybe you live in like a really nice neighborhood or something. I was talking to my wife. She cannot understand this, which is fine. It's like a weird me thing, but I love just going and walking around like slummy parts of town. Like I'll go for a walk, I'll just like put on a hoodie and just walk around like slummy parts of town. And she's like, why do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. I have this like need to like feel part of like just like the general population or something. Yeah. You know what I mean? And maybe it's kind of what you're saying. Cool, man. So when does let me back up. Anything else noteworthy happen there in kind of like early adulthood?
Kind of after, so post high school, I was kind of in this like phase of who am I? Like you finish high school and like that was your identity for so long. Like your friends were your identity, and like that's like, who am I? What am I going to do with my life? What do I want to do?
Am I cool anymore?
Yeah. Do I want to? And I was never one of the cool kids. Yeah. Like really, like again, like I think people were around me because I was that resourceful kid that always had a solution to something. I always had an answer for something. If I didn't know it, I'd figure it out. And so like I was there, and I was kind of the plug, I guess, as people would refer to you as. I mean, and not from like a alcohol and drugs and party sense of the word of being the plug back in the high school scene. Like if someone needed something to get done or needed help, I was there. And
If they say they know a guy, it's you.
Yeah. That was a cool position to be in.
Yeah.
But it also kind of was like, are these people really like, are they wanting me around because I'm enjoyable to be around, or because I'm likable, or is it just because I'm serving a purpose?
Useful, yeah.
But it also made sure that the people that I was reaching out to, that I wanted to be friends with, I always made sure that the lines were very clear. Like, I want these people around because I want them around, and there wasn't anything. So it made me more empathetic, kind of being, in situations in the past where I was, maybe used for stuff. But
got you.
My house burned down 2003. A big wildfire came down off the mountains. Guy was throwing road flares out the window, driving up the mountain canyon, burned down a ton of stuff, and my house was one of them to burn down. My great grandpa built the house. My mom inherited the house. It was like the family home where she had spent her Christmases growing up when she was little, and like it was this. And so that was kind of a cool, obviously like shaking experience for all of us. I was the oldest one at home at the time. My oldest brother was in college at Cal State Long Beach. My older brother was on a mission for the LDS Church in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of felt this responsibility as the oldest sibling, one of the four that were left at home, to kind of be there for my younger brothers and my sister when my parents were navigating, do we rebuild, do we move, insurance stuff, like what do we do?
Yeah.
Lost
much to do.
Yeah. Lost all my camera equipment. All that stuff burned up. Like when the fire and police told us to evacuate, it was, we don't think the fire's ever going to make it down this far. The smoke's pretty bad.
It just feels like a precaution, right?
Leave, grab some important stuff, grab your birth certificates, some clothes, and you'll be back in a few days. Maybe they need to come in and do some smoke damage stuff, but you'll be fine.
Right.
15, 20 minutes after we left, house was gone.
Oh, wow.
And like, so it really wasn't
close call even.
Yeah. We weren't really expecting anything like that to happen. And so that kind of is it was, and I'm not going to go like too much into like the Harry Potter and Phoenix stuff, but like it really it was an opportunity for me from the ashes to figure out my own identity and who I wanted to be. And not only because I lost everything that I had, but because we moved into a new neighborhood and we moved into a new home and to a new, for my brothers, a new school district, new boundaries, and new church boundaries for my religion. And like, it was just a whole new shift and a change. And so I was in this position where I was like, who do I want to be? Have I been true to who I really wanted to be up to this point?
Yeah.
Mostly, but during that age group, there's such an identity shift.
Yeah, man. It's like, when you always do the same stuff, you're around the same people, there's this inertia to you being the same person. Yeah. And maybe that's who you want to be, maybe not, but you can at least ask the question.
And it pushed me far enough away from my circle of friends that it was more of a hassle to drive to go hang out with them and stuff. And so it was like, I find new friends, I find new friend group, I find a new group of people I want to associate with. And that house burning down was actually one of the biggest blessings for me in my life, meaning that it put me in a circle of people that introduced me to my now wife. We've been married 16 years now. Yeah. 2 kids. Like the best things have happened because my house burned down, and it was because again it forced me to evaluate where I was and say, am I happy with where I'm at? And do I want to keep going in the direction I was going, or is this a fork in the road that now I can actually take a new path? So house burns down 2003. Meet Heath Avery, who's on our operations side at Aptive, been super instrumental in that. He wasn't in the pest control world back then, but that friendship is who introduced me to Vess Pearson and Dave Royce that got me the job of where I'm at. That started kind of my career at Aptive. Yeah. My house burning down introduced me to the circle of friends that introduced me to my wife. The circle of friends, my house burning down gave me a fresh start in a lot of my life and decisions I was making to then again be a master of my own future and not feel slave to where I was a product of my environment. Served a mission for my church, went to Mexico City for 2 years.
How was that?
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And like, it really didn't feel too much different than where I grew up. Like one street, 2 streets over weren't great neighborhoods and stuff where I grew up. Yeah. It was massive. I mean, it was definitely crowded. It was the biggest city that I've ever lived in.
Oh, it's huge, man, right?
So many people. Yeah. And I don't know how it worked, but it worked. Public transportation, driving, like it is so much chaos, but it's such a beautiful chaos to see, and it just works. And they're such a humble working class people that hold on to family values, and Like I loved it.
Did your mission get out into like the sticks at all, or is it entirely contained in the city?
Yeah, so Mexico City was like the mission. I was Mexico City East.
Yeah.
And so it was the eastern part that was split into 4 pieces. So you had
Yeah.
a chunk of the city and then all of the suburbs.
Okay.
But the suburbs weren't like gap of green and then like a city or a town. It was all buildings.
Just sprawl.
It was just buildings on buildings on buildings, and like
Yeah.
you pass the street, and you're like, now you're in the estado, the state of Mexico, or the countryside, but it was just more and more buildings.
In theory.
Yeah, and there were some rural areas. Like I served up in like the mountainous areas and like
Yeah.
in the coffee farms and like super cold, beautiful, like sprawling hills. But most of the time I was kind of more in the inner city.
Gotcha.
And that's where I felt like I was the most impactful.
Yeah.
Too, because I did grow up around gangs. I did grow up around homeless people. I grew up around all that kind of stuff. And again, even as a kid, I'd always go up and just talk to people, and I always wanted to connect with people. And so I was a champion's, a people's champion. Like the cool thing that about that is that I never felt like most people were in my emails and letters that I was getting were like, well, dude, you're in one of those dangerous places in the world, like one of the most dangerous cities. Aren't you worried about getting robbed and this and that? And I'm like, honestly, no.
No, I'm chilling.
Like I wave at everybody. Like everybody that I'd see, I'd wave at them. And like I'd go and give fist bumps and high fives to everybody. The homeless people, the gangs, the cartels. Like I'd go and talk to everybody there. And so actually, because of that, I had the opportunity to go and work and serve and volunteer in a lot of areas that even typically they weren't putting white American missionaries in, because I was, again, wanting to connect with the people. And I'd hear people say, as I'd walk by, hey, you can rob any other gringo.
Not him.
But these guys, they're helping. Like these 2 people or these guys, they're helping. They're helping our kids. They're trying to give our kids a life that we weren't able to have. They're trying to teach them English. They're trying to keep them off the streets. Like you can rob anybody you want, but if you rob these 2 guys, you have a problem with us. And like, hearing that from the cartels and from the gangs and from like the street crews is actually super comforting. Like they had your back. And so we were able to work later and work longer hours and make a bigger impact. And there were times where even at night, like some of the street gangs would walk us back to our apartments and where we lived, because like, you shouldn't be out here super late, but we know you're doing good. So we're going to walk with you so you don't have problems.
Well, there's an element, and this is applicable to door too. There's an element of just like, you guys are putting that energy out there and people responding kind. Like, it's super hard to be a jerk to the guy who's just like stoked to see you, big smile on his face, all type of. I tell my reps that all the time. Like when they're like, what do we do when the no soliciting person yells at us or the cops come or whatever? And I'm just like, well, first off, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. That happens a lot less to me.
Yeah.
Because the homeowners have a super hard time being angry at me.
Yeah.
I cheese at them so huge.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they just can't do it, So yeah, man, that's awesome. Yeah. I bet you had the time of your life. Just,
yeah, no, it was super fun.
Yeah.
And it was like so much of life. And that was like, 2 years. I was like 2 years and a month. So I squeezed an extra month out of my mission and my time down there. Mm-hmm. And, but so much about life is you get out what you put in.
Yeah.
If you're putting negativity out there, you're going to be met with negativity. If you're putting like, kind of snobby attitudes out there or better than you attitudes out there, you're going to get that in return.
Yeah.
And so like you said, like have the big cheesy smile, like be the guy that's the hugger, the high fiver, the fist bumper, like wave at everybody, like be a reason that people smile. Uh-huh. And, like there's an old, like I was a little Cub Scout and Boy Scout and Eagle Scout, growing up and stuff. I mean, I wasn't really super invested. I got my Eagle Scout like a day before, like the age cut off.
Yeah.
Like I was down to the wire.
Yeah.
But there was this saying, like growing up camping, right? Like leave the campsite better than you found it.
Yep.
And so I took that with every job I had, every position I held in my early jobs, every classroom I was in, every chance I had to be in a group. Mm-hmm. My goal was always just that scout rule of leave the campsite better than you found it. I always just wanted to leave relationships, leave situations better than when I walked into them. Mm-hmm. And honestly, that has been one of the biggest. I mean, if you're looking at my life and what I've done to like, this guy is at least semi-successful. Mm-hmm. Like that has been one of the biggest secrets to my success is that I really do care about who I'm around, who I'm working with, and who I'm impacting. And I always want to leave relationship situations better than when I found them. And so I always left my mission areas better. When I started into my job with Aptive, like it was always, I want to leave these situations better than when I found them.
Love it. Love it. That's a nugget and a half right there. So you get back and, well, let's jump forward to getting involved with, not with sales yet, but with the industry.
Yeah.
How's that all come about?
Yeah. So I got back from Mexico, May of 2007.
Okay.
My parents had moved to Utah when I was on my mission.
Yep.
And so I came back to a place I didn't really know, to people I didn't know, no friends. And I went on my LDS mission a little bit later than most people too. So I wasn't just this bright-eyed, I went when I was 21, got back at 23, turning 24, turned 24 when I got home.
Yep.
And so it was, I didn't have a lot of same circle of friends. A lot of my friends had already graduated from college. They were already in their lives. They were having kids. They were, it was just a whole different.
So it's like you started over again.
Yeah. So again, it was another fresh start, another fire, like another chance to rise rise from the ashes as a phoenix. Mm-hmm. And so I get back, I come back to Utah, lived here for a few weeks, worked with my dad. He was working construction and plumbing up here. Mm-hmm. Started with him. And then, my wife, now Adrian, we had kept in touch my whole kind of mission and wrote letters and emails. And it wasn't like she wasn't my girlfriend or anything beforehand. I wanted her to be, but I also didn't want to leave her in a situation where she felt like her life was on hold for 2 years while I was out volunteering and couldn't come home and couldn't take phone calls and all that. I wanted to take like a less selfish approach to it.
Yep.
Plus, I didn't want her to. didn't want to be one of those stories of a missionary that gets broken up with while they're on their mission.
Yeah.
I just wanted to leave things done. But we were great friends beforehand, mm-hmm. and again, thanks to my house burning down, it put me in with her and a lot of my close friends now. Get back from my mission, we start dating. Mm-hmm. I end up moving down to California fairly quickly after I get home, mm-hmm. and because that's where she was out of. She was based out of California.
Okay.
Lived there for the summer. Slept on a cot in my brother's house in Southern California, in the same room as their 6-month-old kid.
Nice.
And so my job was, hey, you don't have to pay rent, but if the baby wakes up, you try to put him to sleep.
Yeah.
And also, we need a babysitter at least every other weekend or every weekend or every other weekend, so we can go on a date. Mm-hmm. And so the trade-off was that I slept on a cot with my 6-month-old nephew. In exchange for free rent and being able to be where my girlfriend was and be able to, eventually build enough of a relationship with her that she proposed. She said yes and all of that. So I get back, mm-hmm. move to California, start working construction down there. Mm-hmm. Was working at a steel fabrication shop.
Yep.
They built bridges and skyscrapers and all that kind of stuff. And I was in the shop building, all the pieces that would get shipped out.
Yeah.
Had a worksite injury. Broke these 2 fingers and shattered the bone here and stuff.
Did you choose that job for any particular reason, or is it just kind of the job you found?
Paid really good.
Yeah.
My brother worked at the shop at the time, and I knew the family that owned the business.
Okay.
And it was kind of just where everybody kind of went to work after their mission or before their mission. It's kind of like
landing place.
Yeah, if you knew that family, you could probably go and get a job there. And some people turned it into a career, and they were again, construction, especially when you're getting government contracts and prevailing wage, it paid really good.
Yep.
And it was also, for me, the allure was the hours. My day started at 6, but I was done by 3, which means I had the whole rest of my day. I'd go home, take a nap, and I could go hang out, go on dates, go to the beach, go do all of these things and still have a life even during the week.
Yep.
And still make good money.
Right.
And so I did that, had the injury. The injury put me on disability for a little bit, mm-hmm. But that gave me, again, more time with my wife, girlfriend at the time, to build that relationship, more time to, again, see what I was doing and build relationships with my friend group that, again, introduced me to the company. So I moved back to Utah for a little bit after, when the injury happened. It was like, well, no, I'm not working with my brother and helping him with this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. My family hasn't really seen me in 2 years, and I got home and ditched them fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. I decided to move back home. I also didn't kind of know where my relationship was going at that point with my wife. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of one of those, let's give some distance. Let's see if it's where it needs to go. So I moved home and started working up here for a weed control and lawn fertilizing company in Utah called Turf Plus.
Okay.
And I was spraying houses and weed treating lawns and all of that kind of stuff in a
Yeah.
big water buffalo truck. And
Nice.
the cool thing about that is I love the windshield time jobs, and I love jobs that put me outside, again, put me interacting with people.
Yeah.
And I was able to throw a Bluetooth headset on and talk to my girlfriend almost all day long.
Yeah.
Her job, she was a nanny with two girls that were special needs. And so a lot of her job too is she was with them and feeding them and playing with them. A lot of times she'd have her Bluetooth headset on too. And like, it wasn't little. Like back then it was like the big, like Motorola, like teardrop sized, thing. But I had that on and I'd be out spraying lawns. And when I wasn't talking to her, I was listening to music. And like, it was a really, really fun job. And it kind of got me, I think it was that little bit of skill set that when I moved back down to California at the end of that year, end of 2007, I proposed, we were getting married, all this kind of stuff. It was, okay, Kyle now he's been in the service industry. I reconnected with Heath, who was running the branch for what was back then the now Aptive at the time. Uh-huh. And I was like, hey, I've done this in weed control and lawn fertilizing. I haven't done pest control, but it's kind of what I know.
Yeah, kind of adjacent industries.
Yeah, so I jumped in there, and that was kind of end of 2007 is when I started with the company, and it's just been a fun ride ever since.
Okay, so, and we're going to get
I was jumping all around. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. So we're going to get into this. You kind of, backdoored into pest control sales. When you were out here in Utah, what was this, 2006, 7, you said?
Yep.
Did anybody try to recruit you to knock doors?
As soon as I got off my mission,
Yeah.
a lot of people were. Uh-huh. But I had such a bad taste in my mouth for door-to-door sales. Uh-huh. And mainly because I'd left on my LDS mission later in life than most people do. Now they go when they're 18, but back then it was like 19 or 20.
Yeah.
And I went when I was 21.
Yeah.
I had already kind of been around in these like the singles wards and like that hub of people. And so before my mission, I had been around a lot of the summer sales guys that would come into the town. They'd move into our ward or our boundaries for the summer.
Yeah.
They'd date all the girls that we all wanted to date. They'd leave heartbreaks in their wake. And I was like, these guys, they come in, they do a lot of damage. They talk about how much money they're making. They're the new attractive, shiny object for everybody that we've been working hard to be attractive to for a while. And so I was just like, I don't want to be one of those guys. And this was back when it was like the puka shell necklace and the popped, the popped coat collar of the really thick, oversized polo and socks with sandals. And it was just this whole just vibe that I was like, that's not me. And even in the space now, I've never been, and I don't really even see myself as the bro. When you think of a summer sales guy, I don't think people think about you or even me. I don't think we necessarily fit that mold early on. And so I'd already told myself, I'm not going to do summer sales. I don't want to be a door-to-door sales guy. My dad was kind of anti-salespeople because of, the salespeople he dealt with in his business were the tools and the pipes and the materials. And he's like, they're all trying to get a buck. They're going to charge you as much as they can because they're making commission. You don't trust people on commission. If I want a job, I bid the job, and I have to stick within that budget. His mentality was salespeople are scum. And you think of that greaseball used car salesman, the typical era.
This is the early days of what I would call modern door to door. Vivint was probably doing their thing, but if you skip back 10, 15 years before that, it's just a whole bunch of vacuum guys. And
it was
stuff,
it was wild west.
Yeah,
and there wasn't a lot of, because the industry wasn't big enough, and there weren't any companies that were big enough to kind of set a standard. It really was say what you got to say, do what you got to do.
Right.
So I get back, and I was approached by a few friends that had done it, and I was like, that's not me. I'd rather go work construction by the sweat of my brow, it was that. But so I started with the company, and I actually didn't start in sales. I started on the service side.
Yes.
And so I was spraying houses and being the technician. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until the summer of 2008 when all the sales guys started showing up that I realized, hey, these sales guys are different.
Yeah.
Vess Pearson, who's now the CEO of Aptive, was one of the team managers. Mm-hmm. Chase Williams, who's one of my co-presidents, was one of the team leaders and sales reps on the team. And I actually serviced his account. His account, one of his sales was the first account that I ever done a startup or an initial or an install on.
Yeah.
He showed up in April, and I had these misconceptions again about door-to-door guys, and I showed up to this customer's house clearly thinking that I was going to have to explain the contract, explain what we do, unexplain what the sales guy said.
Yeah.
And I show up, and the lady was like, yeah, it's a year, it's this much. I know what I'm doing. I know it covers this. I know if I have problems in between, I have to cut. You can come back out for free, but I have to call you.
Yeah.
And like,
this is an honorable transaction.
yeah, I was like, wow.
They still like that Chase guy.
Yeah.
They like me.
Yeah. And so
I can feel good about all this.
100%. And so like, it was that interaction, I think, with Chase, with Chase's first account. And by the time I'd gotten that account serviced, he had already sold 2 or 3 more down the street. And so I was like, wow, this is cool.
Stoked.
And so at the end of that day or the end of that week, I was like, how much money did you make? You know, like this week. And he was like, oh, you know, about this much. And later on in the summer, I came across a sales rep, like a rookie pay scale in the printer at the office, looked at it and I was like, wait, they can make this? Like, it was always this kind of like, it started opening my eyes.
Right.
Because as I got to know the culture, or at least the culture in our sales company, it was very much the customer knows what they're signing up for. You are providing a service they need. They're happy with the service. And if there is anything wrong with it, we come back out at no additional charge. Like, it was something I could get behind. So instead of growing up or instead of sitting in Southern California traffic on my way home at the end of my day as a technician, because I was in a company truck, and that was a big blessing back then because I didn't even have I don't even think I had my own vehicle, you know, back then. Instead of sitting in traffic for 2 hours, I'd pull off the freeway, drive into a neighborhood, and start knocking my own doors as a tech. And that wasn't typical. Like, they didn't even really know how to pay a technician commission at that point.
I bet your pitch was sweet.
Yeah, and it was like, hey,
I'm here. I'll do it right now.
My truck. Yeah, exactly. And like, it was pretty freaking easy.
Yeah.
And so I'd pull off. I'd make a few sales, spray them, and I think I get paid like $75 a sale or something like that back then. And now reps are selling $1,000 contracts, making $400 or $500 a deal. Like, it's ridiculous.
Different times.
But it's awesome. Like, well deserved because the job is hard.
Yep.
But I was making like $75 a pop, and I'd come home, you know, that much richer.
Yeah.
And I think I won, like, because I had sold the most as a technician. I think they gave me like a TomTom GPS, which was a game changer for my routing back then because I used to have to flip through a map book to find out where houses were.
Oh, wow. I didn't even consider that.
And so I got a TomTom or a Garmin. It was a Garmin.
Yeah.
And that got my routes done faster, which gave me more time to then sell. So I was starting to really learn how that was. And pretty soon, like, I was making almost as much in my sales as an early technician and even as a service manager, because I transitioned into that role fairly quickly in 2008, managing the service technicians and the trucks and the chemicals and the maintenance and all that. I was making a good chunk of my money was coming from sales commissions. And so then that franchise that we were a part of, or that the ownership group was a part of, sold end of 2008.
Yeah.
Right when the housing market all crashed and everything too.
Yeah.
Dave Royce and Vess Pearson decided to start their own pest control company, back then called Eco First.
Okay.
And they had sold their previous franchise customer base off to Terminex, and that gave Dave a decent chunk of money to dump into his own brand. And so they approached me and said, "Hey, we're going to start this company in 2009. We're not going to need you until right before the summer, 2009. We can't pay you money right now to keep you on board. So go work for Terminex for the next 7 months, and grow with them for a little bit, learn a little bit more about pest control, and then we're going to move you to one of 4 markets." And I didn't know if I was going to be moving to Arizona, the Bay Area, Seattle, Washington, Denver, Colorado. And it really wasn't until like January that it was like, okay, he's moving here, he's moving there. And so I ended up having to move to the Bay Area, which was very expensive to live. But I worked for Terminex for a while, so that was fun. I got to see how a big business that had been around for a lot of years in the space operated, how they took care of their customers, where they saved cost, how they managed their routing. Like, it was kind of a cool...
Probably got like more established SOPs and stuff like that.
Yeah, very established policies, procedures, SOPs, you know, all those fun words that we all know now, you know, in this world.
Right.
But they had originally pulled me into their management program, and they were like, "Hey, because you were a service manager there, we want to fast track you and do this and that." But because my name was one of the names that was in the deal that Dave could pull into his next company, once the higher ups circulated that down to the ownership in the local branch, hey, like, Kyle isn't going to be probably long term with us because he's one of the people that's named in this deal that Dave can pull to go grow with them. So they quickly pulled me out of the service manager and branch manager training platform and the schooling and all of that kind of stuff, and dumped me into an inner city, downtown San Bernardino, Section 8 housing route.
Fun times.
And so, and again, like, you have to have, like, don't let life happen. What people say, don't let life happen at you, like, make life happen for you.
Right.
Every time I've been in a situation that hasn't been favorable, house burning down, or, you know, the injury that I experienced working construction, or, you know, being put into a route that was high turnover, high churn, low customer retention, high debt, past due customers, high collections, it forced me to get really good at my craft. So I had to lean into more of the product knowledge and more of the pest knowledge of how to take care of their problems, like the German roaches and all these, like, literal infestations, where if I didn't get that house pest free for the inspection that gave that Section 8 house rent from the government that month, like, they were canceling, I was losing, I was getting, you know, my job was on the line. And so I had to learn again, connect with the customers really, really well, and communicate product use very, very clearly, and learn how to actually solve problems at a deeper level. And so I became a little bit more of a product nerd and a bug nerd, which only helped when I became a branch manager for that first company, Eco First.
Yep.
I knew the products better than I ever had. I knew what worked, what didn't, treatment methods, all of that kind of stuff. And I turned what was one of the highest churn routes in the branch to one of the highest retention routes. And because of my sales knowledge previously, every time I got a cancel on my route, like, they were like, okay, that customer canceled. You have one less route on your production, which means you're making less per month. I went out and sold 2 more people myself. And again, the technicians weren't typically selling, even at any company, even at Terminex and Orkin. They weren't really big salespeople. And so it was that looking for that opportunity and making sure that I was in control of what was happening to me and not at me. And so, I turned that route around to the point where people were like, wow, like, I want that route. I want to be in that area. And I was like, you don't want to be in this area. But so, fast forward, I moved up to the Bay Area.
Yep.
Started off as a branch manager for the new company, the new brand, Eco First.
Yep.
Trucks, got sales rep housing, found the office, licensing, permitting, chemicals, payroll, hiring office staff. Like, everything was my job. I had a checklist, and
because a fair amount of that is sales managers, regional guys, their duty these days. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Or they come in and they set things up, but like, I had to be there to get everything done for them.
Yeah.
And again, it was always like an experiential thing for me. It was like, how can I have these? If I want to be the top office out of the 4 that are in the company this year, how do I set the stage and set the tone for my sales force that doesn't know me? I don't know them, to have them work with me and work for me at a way that's going to put me at the top. Like, everything from that, if I wanted to grow on the operations side, I had to have the top office, or I had to have top salespeople, and I didn't know. I couldn't pick them.
Yeah.
And so I made sure we got the apartments dialed in. When they came in, I already had their ID badges all printed. I'd called them and got their pictures sent. I'd left their uniforms sitting on their apartment beds with like a little Andes mint on like the pillow with everything, like their sales manual. Like, I made it an experience. So when they showed it to my office versus offices they had worked at previously in the industry, it was like, wow, this branch manager,
he's on
really,
his stuff.
He's on his stuff. And like, if you know that your manager, the person that's in charge of retaining your accounts, servicing your accounts, that ultimately is going to put more dollars in your pocket, is on the ball, are you going to work harder for him and harder with him? Absolutely. And so for me, it was about that experience coming in, and we ended up having the top growth office in the company that year. I had the top service pro and technician retention, top customer retention, and top sales growth. And I was the least senior out of the other branch managers in the company. And so for me, it was like, I'm on the bottom of the totem pole. How do I jump a few rungs in the ladder?
Yeah. Career development too. It's not just like, and that's a big point that a lot of people need to understand is crushing it this year. I don't know, maybe you do 20% more than you would have done otherwise. Sure, you're going to make 20 or 30% more money, depending on how the pay scale works. But you also have to think about like your own little brand going forward into the future,
Yeah.
which sounds like was part of your mindset.
Yeah, you get known for doing certain things, and like you can bank on those successes, and people want to be around successful people and around people that win.
Right.
And I wanted to I always want to have more wins on my record than I have losses. And you know, that's you can't avoid losses. They're going to happen. You know, there's been years where I've made dumb investments, or where I didn't make as much, or where I hired the wrong people. Like, you have to own those. But I've won more than I've lost. And when you look at and that's really how it is. Like, when you're meeting with a company, or you're meeting with a recruiter, or you're a recruiter meeting with a rep, they're going to look at your win-loss record. Nobody expects a perfect record. Like, but there are people that have more losses than they have wins. There are people that have more wins than losses. And so I always wanted to make sure that I wanted to be a Bulls or a Lakers or a Celtics, or I mean, maybe not the Celtics, but like, I wanted to be a person, an organization, and a brand that had banners hanging in their rafters, that had wins, that had the foundation of, if I work with this person, I'm going to be successful, or they're going to at least help me be more successful than I would be otherwise. And so over time, like after that summer, I had talked to the ownership group. I talked to Vest, talked to Dave, and said, "Hey, I want to move up in the company." And I had the top office. I had this. Like, where's my next move? I want to be a regional manager. Like, I want to manage multiple branches. That's good. Yes, we agree with you. But from a seniority standpoint, like, you just haven't. Maybe this year was this year luck? Like, no, this, you know. And my response was kind of like, no, it wasn't luck. Like, here's what I did. But it was still like, these other people have longer track records, not with the new company, because everyone's on the same, like, same standing.
Yep.
But historically, they've done this, and so we have to kind of bet on the historics of things. And then it was like, well, what about the sales side? I was like, I can sell. What about the sales side? If I want to move, and I want to move up and have upward mobility in the company, I don't need to stay on the operations side. Like, what about the sales side? And that's not, again, a typical transition in the space.
No.
Typically, people transition off the doors. And I was 26. I was 25, turning 26 at the time. Like,
yeah, I'd love to go back in time and be a fly on the wall for that conversation and see their faces when you say that, because that's not a typical conversation.
Yeah. And the cool thing about that is that when we all kind of stepped back after that kind of conversation and teasing around with each other, they had both had the impression maybe Kyle belongs on the sales side. Earlier on, little hints throughout, because I was a technician that sold. I was a service manager that went out and sold. I was a branch manager that went out and sold. Like, I still wanted to always go out and drive revenue. And if revenue wasn't coming in from other people, I was like, well, at least I'm helping contribute to the bottom line. Like, I'm going to help.
Yep.
And so they had both, independently of talking to each other and independently of talking to me, it felt maybe Kyle belongs on the sales side. And so when that conversation came up, we just found out my wife was pregnant. I had health insurance. I had a company truck, company phone. You know, I was on salary.
Yeah,
I had a good job.
Good
Great.
money.
Yeah, and I was making, back then, I think I did like $48,000 a year.
Still, though, I mean,
in the Bay Area, which didn't go very far.
You're a manager of a thing.
Yeah, and
you
there
have
were
a
bonuses.
quote unquote real job.
Yeah, I had a real job, so I had stability.
Yeah.
And I think I was eligible for like a $10,000 bonus, you know, that year. But that would have put me like at $58,000 or something.
Right.
And $58K in the Bay Area didn't go very, very far. So I mean, I had a job and I had stability, but it would have been tight.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been easy, like, especially with my wife having a baby. She wouldn't have been able to work as much. So I took a job on the sales side. I said, okay, I'm going to move to Utah. I'm going to try to recruit, even though I don't know anything about recruiting. I'm going to go out and sell a full summer, even though I've never done more than just a few sales here and there a day. And so I packed up, promoted my service manager to be the branch manager of our office in San Jose, and moved to Utah, end of 2009. And, had a baby early spring the next year, and went and kind of sold. Yeah, so kind of that recruiting season, I was just this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like, you should come out and work for me. I had no idea who to recruit, the types of people to recruit, my circle of friends.
So you're going out this first summer with a team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a co-manager, like a pillar rep to teach me how to manage, because he had sold and managed before.
Yep.
But I was the recruiter. They were my reps. But I wasn't really, like, I wasn't even seeing myself as the leader in that situation, because I really didn't do a whole lot. I got asked to go to Phoenix, Arizona to sell. And I think you sold in Vegas. So, I mean, we both experienced the fun.
Yes.
The fun that is a very, very hot, buggy, super competitive. And because of the competition, low priced, people are making price decisions versus other types of decisions. Yeah. And the industry's changed again a lot since we've knocked in those markets. But out of the 8 offices we had that year, Phoenix was my 9th choice of places to go. Like, meaning like I didn't want to go there, but neither really did anyone else.
Yeah.
And so I like in true fashion was like, well, if nobody else is going to do it, like might as well be me. Like if not me, who, if not now when?
Somebody has to.
Yeah. And so for me, it was twofold. It was one, like I saw it as a challenge that I would help me grow, and it did. And I saw it as a way to cement myself into the company as somebody that did hard things and went and maybe even leaned on the sword a little bit sometimes, as like, if someone's going to do it, like Kyle's always down.
Yeah.
And that, again, that kind of changed, again, the trajectory of my career. But I had no idea what I was doing out there. The branch manager that was there had switched from the sales side, had never managed a branch before. I had never ran a sales team before, and I had switched from the ops side. So I spent a lot of my mornings training him on operations.
Oh, that's funny.
And he spent a lot of his mornings training me on sales.
Yeah.
And then, so it worked out really, really good. And then my co-manager was super helpful for the time that he was there. And he didn't do a full summer. He was only able to put in like 2 months.
Yeah.
But he did 2 months with me. And my team just sucked, dude. Like I brought out the wrong people. I brought out people that I thought were going to do good. Or not even I thought. I wanted them to do good. I saw them in a situation. I was like, this can change your life. But what I found was that you can't want people, like you have to want your people to do better than they need. And I believe, like in an eternal perspective, like God knows we're capable of so much more than we're doing. Even like now, like I'm capable of doing more than I'm giving myself credit for, that I'm even aware of. And God knows that I'm capable of doing way more. Like as parents, I see the potential in my kids, and I saw potential in all these people that I hired, but I wanted them to do way better than they wanted to do for themselves.
Yeah.
And so these people went out and they were expecting to have this massive amount of success that didn't come with a lot of work, didn't come with the high temperatures of Phoenix. And I think I had 29 reps that started the summer that first year, and I think 11 finished the summer. And out of the 11 that finished, 5 of them I had to ship to other markets because it was too hot, too dry, too horrible. So they finished their summer selling for EcoFirst back then in other branches of the company. And so my team was down to like 6 or 7 by the end of the summer. And out of the 11 that finished, like 3 came back to do a second year. So I went into this recruiting year like I had 29 reps. This is going to be great. I'm going to have 60 next year. I'm going to be this manager. Like, and then at the end of my summer, it was like 11 finished. Okay, guys, which one do you want to come back and work with me next year?
Yeah.
3.
It's tough.
Like it was tough.
It's tough.
But
How did you sell?
I sold decent. Yeah. Like, I mean, I sold 280 accounts. So back then, 280 back then was still above the industry standard. And I think Aptive back then, I think our average rep was doing right around like 180 to 200. So again, I was above average. Yeah. But I also misused a lot of my time. And had I had not wasted my time coddling and babying as a leader, and that's all I knew in that space, right? Like as a branch manager, I get a call from a tech. I'm out of gas. Okay, I'll be right there. Hey, I lost my Webster pole. Okay, I'll be right there to give you a new one. I'm out of chemicals. Okay, I'll be right there. So much of my management job as a branch manager and a service manager was very servant leadership. Yeah. They have a problem. I drop what I'm doing and I go solve it.
And it's a little more legitimate on that end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so every time the sales rep called me, hey, I forgot my clipboard at the apartments. I don't have anything to sell with. Okay, I have a backup clipboard in my trunk. I'll be right there. I'll go get it to you. Here it is. Hey, my car partner's not picking up. I really have to use the bathroom, and like there's no porta potties in the neighborhood. And again, this was before Uber and Lyft and all that kind of stuff too. Because nowadays it's like, dude, you need to use the bathroom. Nobody pick you up. Go grab an Uber. Yeah. Like go or walk. Figure it out. Figure it out. And so I learned after that year, like had I had not spent, so I spent a chunk of my morning training the branch manager when I should have been knocking, and I should have just let the ops teams train him. Yeah. So I was helping, but not really doing the best. I wasn't doing what was best for me and my team. Yeah. And because I was pulling me off the doors, my reps weren't knocking as much as they could have been. And when I was spending time helping these one-off reps that really weren't in it to win it, I wasn't putting up numbers. And if I'm not putting up numbers as a leader, if you're not leading by example and leading from the front if you do this job and you put in the time and you put in the hours, you'll have success. Because they didn't see my numbers, like I found that historically, and it might shift a little bit different now, but back then in like my early 4 or 5 years of selling and leading, typically your team did about at best about a half of what you did as a leader to a third, but most closer to like a third. Yeah. And so if you wanted your team to sell 200, you had to be a 400 plus level rep.
Yeah.
Or, at least 3,
Well, it's dude, it's a tough one for managers to learn. I deal with it all the time, where my guys will want to go be like on doors with a rep, and they'll be on doors with a rep so much that like, maybe the manager, were the only person who had a chance of selling something that day, but then because they were on doors, nobody sold anything that day.
Exactly.
And even though they think they did something helpful, in reality what happened is all the reps with, kind of a poopy mindset looked around at everyone not selling and said, maybe you just actually can't sell and I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
It's actually not me. Nobody can sell.
Yeah.
So I have to tell my reps, I'm like, hey, actually, I think the most helpful thing for you to do, sure, go be with that rep, but be across the street from them.
Yeah.
And just murder doors in their hood. Let them see that while they got 0 or 1 on that street, you did 3. Mm-hmm. And it'll just shatter all these little misconceptions of,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got really good. So my second year, I got really good at like switching areas because people would see that I was successful in my area. Mm-hmm. And if I got a call, like it really shifted my whole mindset. I went from being this coddling, enabling person that really wasn't helping. Mm-hmm. Like I think to win in life or to really like to be impactful in life, you have to help solve people's problems. And if you can't solve your own problems, how can you go solve other people's problems?
Right.
And so I was such a problem solver for my reps that first year to the point where I wasn't letting them fall and skin their knee and learn where their limits were like a good dad should be doing with their kids. Like kids need to crash on a bike. Kids need to fall and get hurt and pick themselves back up. Like they need that or else they don't grow. There's no growth in it. Mm-hmm. And so my second year I really shifted and I implemented like a 2 phone call rule. It was like, I'm not going to take your call unless you call me a second time. And so I'm knocking. I got to put up numbers and I sold 380 the next year. So I doubled, almost, I sold 100 more, but I was managing my own full team and then another team in the Denver market. So I was kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
But I didn't let it, like some people after that first year of like a failure in recruiting, like I had 29 reps start the summer and I had 3 that wanted to come back and do another summer. Yeah. Some people would have said, oh, this job is hard. It's not worth it for me. Yeah. And I said, okay, what can I learn from this situation?
Yeah, that's big.
Turned it into another, 30 something reps the next year. And then it went to 60 and then it went to 100 something. And then it was, so it just scaled. Mm-hmm. But I implemented some standards, some boundaries and set expectations a lot better and a lot more correctly. And I put up numbers. Like when people were calling me to want to knock with me at 7:00 at night, I'd say, no, this is the best time of night for you to be solo on the doors. You can come knock with me, but that one sale that I was going to make or that you would have made because I'm in your area, that might have been the only sale you were going to make that day. I'd rather you get that. Yeah. And so I never said no. Like when people wanted to knock with me or shadow with me or they wanted to train, I never said no because like they need help and they wouldn't be asking for your help.
We'll do it tomorrow morning.
Yeah, let's train tomorrow morning or let's train tonight after we knock until 9 or 9:30. And then we can actually work through things and then you can go to bed knowing you left it all out there and wake up tomorrow morning. So it was never like a no. And I think in leadership, it's not ever this yes or no. It's there's a lot of this not right now. Yeah. And it's like let's train tonight. Let's work through it tonight.
Kind of a hidden benefit too is sometimes when they want you to come knock with them right then, what it actually is it's just their emotions wanting to escape.
Yep.
And you can't let them escape.
Yeah. Yeah. They have to deal with it. Again, to help other people, you have to face your own demons and help your own. You have to help yourself. Yeah. And so I did that and had a way bigger successful summer. More reps finished. I created more leadership, and that really springboarded my growth into. The next year I became a division manager, and then the next year I was able to grow into a regional manager, and then a senior regional and a VP, and then a senior VP over kind of that run.
Did you pretty much grow like a title every year?
There was like 2 years where I was a division manager, and then 2 years where I was like a regional. Yeah. And it wasn't anything more than the goalpost getting moved back because as we scaled, we're like, okay, the regional position, it was too easy to get from a regional to a senior or to a VP. So we got to push this out because we were growing, too good. But I pretty much grew a position a year. I always made more money the next year. I always was able, even within those positions, there were more pay scales and tiers that I was able to earn and capture. And it was really, really a fun ride. Yeah. The unique thing about that though is that 2013, 2014, I'd grown my org big enough that I could have been off the doors. I could have at that point, and most people did, 3 to 4 years on the doors, and they get off the doors, they get into more full-time management. It was really hard to pull me off the doors. And maybe it was because of how I was raised and because I was so much of the construction and yard work and like I enjoyed that trenchy type of work. But it was also the industry kept evolving. Like iPads became a thing and paperless became a thing, and then doorbell cameras became a thing, and then neighborhood Facebook groups and next door apps became a thing, and then Yelp and online reviews, and then COVID. So I actually knocked for 11 years. I relocated with my wife and my kids for 11 summers in a row. And I think Brigham Lindsay at Aptive will hit, if he knocks for one more summer after this one, he'll beat my 11-year record. But I think up to this point, I think I have the most summers logged on the doors. And I'm not maybe even in the space.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom Karen is a beast. Tom gets out there and grinds. But I did 11 summers. And the cool thing about that is that I was able to replicate myself in leadership. These leaders that went out and led for the summers knew that I was actually doing the same as them as well. I was leading my own team. I had recruited my own people. And it was always about this growth mindset. I never wanted to be viewed as the manager. And maybe that was my own perception of it. But I never wanted to be viewed as the manager that was sitting at the office during the summer with their feet up on the desk, watching their bank account grow while everyone else is out there sweating and getting things done. Yeah. And it was, if I can be out here with them, competing with them, growing alongside of them, experiencing the same thing they're experiencing. When I go to train them, I'm more effective because I'm on my game, which is going to help them grow better. My own group of recruits is going to become better educated, and I'll be able to train a new group of leadership, my own group of leaders. I became what are the bees? Like the bees are like the feeder team to the angels, I became like a feeder team into like Aptive leadership. Like I would grow these athletes, these sales athletes after my own self and how I ran things and how I led, so that when I did turn them out into the wild, they were easier to manage because they had been through it with me already. Yeah.
And you had that big emphasis on them being self-sufficient.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And so it was really that model was that it wasn't until I became a president of sales, which as a president, my pay structure shifted, everything shifted. I went from 1099 to W-2. Like at that position change, I could no longer like relocate for the summers. And if your president is relocating and selling, like that's not the right lead. That's not the best use of their time.
Right.
But I sometimes joke with Vess, my boss, the CEO, that in order to get me off the doors, he actually had to give me a position that was, off the doors. Because if not, I'd still be out there.
Well, and I think it's a better way to be, man. There's kind of like two little archetypes, right? There's like the guy who is almost tempted to do everything himself, but he can kind of temper it to be how do I still teach people things, which sounds like maybe what you went through early on. But then there's the guy who's way too eager to be off the doors. Yeah. And it's funny because sometimes those guys hide behind, I'm a great delegator and I'm all about teaching people. And it's like, yes, like technically that is the right thing to think, but you're doing it in this lead from behind. Yeah. Never even showed them right the first time kind of a way. Yeah.
Like for me, it was, I wanted to be a Jordan in the space or a Kobe or, even a LeBron. Like I said it like I wanted to be somebody in the space that was an undisputed GOAT. And if I had won one ring, like how many athletes have won a ring and you never heard from again? Yeah. So many. They win a ring and they're playing in Europe or they don't play again. I wanted to have enough championships stacked in my portfolio of work that when my name came up in conversations with competitors, when my name came up as opportunities to work with, and when my name came up even in my new role as like if you go to Aptive, you get to work with Kyle. Yeah. Kyle won the Masters this many times, the Cup this many times, sold this many accounts over the years that he did it. He was on the doors for this many years. Yeah. He produced this, and this. Like
he's a doer.
Exactly. Not a faker. It was never this like, was it luck? Like for me, you win once. People can say, oh, he just got lucky. Yeah. You win twice. Maybe that luck carried over. You win 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 11 times. There's no question this person or this entity or this group or this company knows what they are doing. And so and I saw that work like over the years when I'd get into these recruiting battles with other companies. A lot of times it was like Mason Bodie, he works with Ambia, our solar company now. He's the president of sales there. When he worked for GreenX, one of our competitors, he he hated when my name came up because he was like, crap, if they're being recruited to Aptive by Kyle, it's going to be really hard to get this guy. Kyle will meet with this guy at midnight. He'll call him. He'll take him places. He'll meet. Like, Kyle is going to probably win if I don't really lay it on thick or pay them more than Aptive's going to pay. Like, and so my name kind of, it was like, and when they'd lose these battles, it was, they couldn't approach him in an aggressive, like, you don't want to work for Aptive standpoint. It was like, crap, he's working with Kyle. So he already knows he's working with someone good. His track record's better than mine, or, you know, or better than mine.
Yeah.
And so the conversations over time started shifting where if it was my name in the conversation, it was, you know, I mean, we'd love for you to work with us, but if you are going to work with Aptive, at least you're working with Kyle. He's a really good dude. And like, so my name, people couldn't smear my name.
Yeah.
In the space.
Didn't you win the Masters that first year that it was Aptive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you were,
and I was a
I don't remember what your
senior regional or VP or something.
Yeah,
I was like a VP.
yeah, you were like OG already at that point. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's
I sold like 37 accounts in 2 days against Brigham Lindsay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like, and I know you'd been doing VP stuff, traveling every which way that whole summer, probably until the Masters.
Yeah.
Right. And then you just, you know, come out of the crowd and beat the brakes off the dudes. And
Yep. Yeah. And that was my third time winning, you know, that Masters.
It's awesome.
I almost won the cup that year too. We took second place.
What's that Christopher Walken quote? Sometimes the lion has to show the jackals who he is.
Sometimes the lion has to show, wow, you know, like, good old. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Dude,
awesome.
I love Christopher Walken, how he talks.
Yeah. So, all right. So just real quick, you know, I feel like we kind of got the run up to you being a real senior guy over there. Give us the fast version of the last 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I transitioned off the doors in 2020. Obviously sold and grew every year up to that point, and was kind of one of the big four kind of forces in the organization to be reckoned with as far as like the big kind of the management trees.
Yeah.
Back then it was me, Connor Ruggio, Chase Williams, Tosh McIntosh. Like, we were kind of the big dogs at the top of the food chain that were just running our organizations, and and we were competitive. It was collaborative, not as often as it maybe could have been and should have been. Yeah, because we also were competing internally for the market share, the space, the area.
Company gets so big, sometimes you're in recruiting battles region to region, right?
Yeah, and we learned how to navigate those fairly quickly.
Yeah.
We implemented some policies and some things within the company to basically allow the rep was going to work with who they wanted to work with.
Yeah.
And you couldn't beat pay scales. You couldn't pay them more to work with your org than they could with theirs. It didn't help. Yeah, no, it didn't really help. So it actually, once we moved to that kind of model where we got more abundant within our own company, it actually helped and brought us all closer together. And when we became presidents and our roles shifted, it was awesome. But yeah, so we navigated the COVID era. That was my last summer on the doors. And again, I probably shouldn't have had to knock and didn't have to knock. But if people had to wear masks and stand 6 feet away from a door, like, it was important to me that I was out there with my people.
Yeah,
I was doing the same thing that they are and navigating it. 2021, we started off that solar division. So we shifted a big chunk of our sales force over to our solar side. Yep. It was Aptive Solar at the time. Now it's Ambia. And so we actually grew smaller in 21. 22, we actually got kicked in the teeth as far as a company goes. We were fighting with solar. That was kind of the wild west, the gold rush of solar at the time. Yep. We'd kind of grown a little bit smaller. We were shifting from volume of accounts to revenue per account, or the account value, and more of lifetime value of the customers and what that meant. And so we were a few years behind. I know that like GreenX and Eco Shield and those guys were always kind of really big rev, big contract value accounts. And when we'd run into them, they were easy switchovers because they were charging way more than we were. But when we looked at it from like the model of what works, it's like if they can be selling that, and if that's where they're setting the standard to, we should be at their price point or
beat them by a couple
below,
percent, not by 50.
Yeah, and or if we're gonna or let's offer more value and let's charge a little bit more. If people are willing to pay that for what they're getting, certainly and surely people will pay a little bit more for a higher value add. And so
there you go.
We brought in the Grit as a partner in 2022 as like a dealer to sell with us and sell for us. They were growing their marketing company when GreenX kind of shut down their stuff.
Yep.
And that was awesome. Like we created some great friendships with them. We got a kind of a look into how they ran their sales force. They got a look into how to run a bigger organization, how to scale and growth at scale.
Yep.
And their reps pound for pound back then, they outperformed us in 22, and it put a little chip on our shoulders into going into 23. And so going into 23, we had.
Let me just say too, it's great to be able to recognize that and be like, I better figure out what they're doing.
Yeah.
Rather than say, screw those guys and kind of pretend like they don't exist, which is what a lot of people do.
Yeah, you have to learn. Like if you're not in life, I believe that you either win or you learn.
Yeah.
Like the only failure is if you don't learn from a situation or learn from a circumstance or learn in a circumstance.
Right.
And so they're bringing them in as a dealer and as a partner was one of the best moves, I think, for them and for us, because again it helped them see how to grow, scale, and how to maintain a bigger organization. And eventually, they're going to be getting into pest control themselves and stuff. They can't just be a marketing company forever, and I think they recognize that as well.
Go them.
And so I mean, you have to own something. You know, you have to own things, and you can't owning reps just sounds weird. Owning people just sounds weird. You know.
Right.
But yeah, so they're getting into that space as well, and so they've learned some stuff that's going to benefit them in their future. They haven't realized that they're going to apply yet from what they've learned from our time together. But we worked close enough together as competitors to go into 23 with some very healthy competition. We had some sales days where we sold against them, Grit versus Aptive, and
that's fun.
there were some really cool things there.
Yeah.
And going into 23, we really just wanted to have a big winning summer and reestablish ourselves as the top. We had downsized our sales force 21, kind of spent 22. I think Donnie Mosier says it best. We'd kind of liken 22 as like Jordan when he tried to play baseball.
Yeah.
We were learning a new game.
Yeah.
And we were learning that game from the people that had already been playing it for a few years.
Right.
And we learned enough of it to say, okay, now we're going to go back. Jordan's still Jordan. Let's go back in 23. And it was fitting because the year was 23, which is Jordan's number.
There you go.
So we went at 23. We had a Jordan summer. We won the championship. Like we came back. We hit all what we wanted to hit our revenue targets and exceeded them. Our per rep average, we almost doubled our revenue per rep. The year before we were like 48, 50K per rep on a summer, and we were right below 100, like 99K per rep.
It's huge, dude.
So we doubled in a year.
That's enormous.
We put on the same amount of revenue as the year prior with less of a sales force. So again, we got more out of our sales force.
Yep.
So moving into 24, it's been a really fun year to really harness that momentum that we have and the success we had from 23. We shifted our leadership group around. So at the end of 22 into 23, we introduced what's called like a partner. Yeah. So like the old regional titles and all that kind of stuff went away. And we actually increased pay, increased compensation, standardized pay plans across the board. But with the increased pay to these partners came a little bit more shared. They're sharing the labor costs, the service pro costs, the true housing costs, the sales operation costs. So on paper, they're making more, but really the upside comes from if they run more efficient. I mean, how do you make money as a business owner, right? Like the more efficient you run, the more value you provide.
Profits, not revenue.
Yeah. And so your focus now, instead of just them calling and saying, we want the best apartments in the books.
Yeah.
Like and then we're not putting people in the ghetto, but because all of those things impact their bottom line.
They're aligned with
everything. And because they're sharing the service pro cost and the service pro labor now, do they care now if only half the jobs get done in a day? 100%, because they're paying that service technician the whole day's worth of labor and gas and product and material. And so they need to have a focus on, is the service pro maximize? Are they getting at least 8 to 10 of their jobs done a day? Are they getting more? Can we put them in a position to do 11 or 12 stops in a day? Which means I have to optimize the routes. I have to go as a team leader, as a manager, as a regional, as a partner. I have to go into the routes at the end of the day now and say, why is there a 30-minute drive time between one job and another?
Yeah.
No, let's move this one to another day, or put this one at the start or at the end. Let's put these jobs that are on the same street on the same route. And like it's turned into this new responsibility.
Well, it's good too, because we can provide a better product.
And be more efficient.
I think, and you, having been in ops and sales, I know you're going to understand this, but I think historically, maybe not my org or yours, but door to door, one of the big problems we had is that there's been misalignment between sales and ops. Just the classic story of a salesman selling something really ugly that's going to blow up in the technician's face of whatever product. Right. But just like, I'm going to get this commission. Whatever happens afterward, forget that, right? So
very take.
Yeah, so you marry sales and ops, and it's better for the customer too. It's
Yeah.
something we can all feel better about.
Yeah, and the company, like it's
Yeah.
been healthier, and so we finished 23 after the first year of these partners. The partners are now going into 24, having learned some in a really good, profitable way that they were really efficient, some that weren't as, and we're moving into more alignment with the strategy team of the company, the operations team, the partner level. And honestly, we're going to have an amazing summer this year. I'm really, really excited with where we're going.
Yeah, sounds like he's geared up to kind of
We did 100 million in new customer revenue last year. Actually, we did like 120. Our target was 100. We did like 120, and we exceeded our goal, which was awesome. And this year we're shooting for 180 as kind of our target, 180 million in new customer revenue. But we're going to try to hit like 200, 190, 200. Which is pretty aggressive,
it's huge.
But we can do it. And so I think that's where we're at now is really replicating ourselves, adding in more systems and processes, leveraging technology the way that technology can to help our people have more hours on the doors, like figuratively, right? Like putting them in front of the best possible customers, having the systems in place to maximize their productivity and minimize their downtimes. And 24 is going to be an amazing year, and I'm really, really excited for it.
Stoked. So as we kind of wrap up, dude, any advice you want to get? Any topic you could direct it at whoever you want, reps, managers, maybe people like building their career through the years. What do you got for us?
Man, that's a broad,
super general,
broad but specific
parting
question.
Advice here.
Yeah. I would say like, in an era and an age where we have so much information at our fingertips, like instant gratification, instant food. I want something from Amazon. I can get it delivered today or tomorrow. I can get food delivered here. You can see, feel, hear anything instantly nowadays. It leads some people, especially kind of this younger generation coming into our space, wanting to learn sales, wanting to learn communication skills. It's easy for them to want to skip steps in the process, but you have to approach it very linear, like a video game. Like to get to the next level, you have to complete the first level first. Yeah, you can't jump. Like not everything in life has a warp tube in Mario Brothers that will take you from world 1 to world 8 just by jumping over a few bricks and like getting there. Like you can't really skip levels, and you can find ways to get through faster. Like you can run, you can jump faster, you can eat the mushroom. No, like you can you can take the things that are available to you. And again, that was purely video game, video game Mario Brothers reference.
I got you.
I do not, support or, whatever, but you can't skip levels. Yeah. And so everybody nowadays wants to be an entrepreneur. And I respect that. But you're doing it. Is it easy?
No.
Was it easy at the beginning?
Nope.
And were there times, and I'm kind of asking you a question to lead into where I'm going with it. Were there times early in your entrepreneurship career and in your career as a business owner where you're like, I wish I had a little bit more experience on someone else's dime before I jumped into this? Like another year or two in this space, making mistakes on someone else's dollar probably would have been helpful.
Totally.
And so I think that to become an entrepreneur, you need to, first of all, I think that it's really been like, I'm an employee or I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an employee or I'm a business owner. And like people forget about the space in between, and they forget about what space you can occupy as an employee in those years. And like, I don't know if it's a real word. I don't know where I heard it, if I made it up, but I like this kind of in-between space of an intrapreneur. Yeah. You're working within an organization as if it's your own, taking ownership over your results to build collectively a better company, a better service. And I think that more people needs to first of all become a sexy position in the world. Yeah. I'm an intrapreneur, and there needs to be some value in it. Like I love I don't own my own business. Like I work for Aptive Pest Control. Like I work for Aptive Environmental. They pay me a paycheck. Like, but do I feel ownership in that business? 1,000%. Yeah. I feel extreme ownership in it. Yeah. And that's what's gotten me where, have I had, when I was a regional and those kinds of things, like I was the owner of my org. So I got glimpses of.
I like that verbiage too. It's like you might not have a company, but you have an org.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I always kind of crack jokes about the Vivint guys. 'Cause like you'll look at somebody's Instagram and they'll have like at whatever region. And I'm like, who does he work for? He's just branding as his region, but in a way,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. Like
Yeah,
they
and
take pride in the org.
Yep, you learn it, and you run your org as if it's your own company, and yeah, you do have to look at your P&L. But like most guys are like, this is what I made at the end of the summer. They're not looking at this is what I could have made. They're not looking at where they were inefficient. They're not looking at how much they paid out in bonuses that they got burned on. Like if you treat it more within someone else's organization or within someone's company, live and love the process of being that entrepreneur for a little bit longer. Like, and I don't have a set number of years.
Yeah.
And obviously when you're in a position where you're no longer learning and growing within an organization and you feel like you've outgrown them and like they're no longer serving you and you're no longer serving them, like that's life telling you it's time to take the next leap.
Yeah.
But you can't rush that. And I would say don't rush it. All these people are so young, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, even like mid-20s. Like I'm 40 and I didn't knock my first door as a sales rep till I was 26.
Yeah.
And so these guys that are coming in with 6 years ahead of me, I'm excited for these guys to learn what they're going to learn that took me into my late 20s and early 30s to learn. And so I would say don't rush the process. Learn what you can as much as you can, and know that by human nature. So in that entrepreneurship phase that you're in, like don't just be an employee. Like be an employee that provides value. Provide value both to the people above you and below you, and understand your balance. Like somebody above you is making an override. That's okay. If they're providing value and they're helping you make more money, they deserve it.
Yeah.
And if you're helping provide value for the people below you, you deserve the override that you're like. You deserve that, and that shouldn't be secret. It doesn't need to be this hopped around. Like my conversation with my sales reps when I was recruiting them was, if I help you succeed, I get rewarded.
Totally.
If I bring you on and I shouldn't have brought you on, I lose.
Yeah.
You lose. I'm not in the business of creating lose-lose scenarios. Let's create a win-win. And so I think that my advice, especially that aspiring entrepreneurial group and that kind of entrepreneurial group that's existing right now, like provide value, treat it like your own, take ownership of it. But by nature, and back when we were cavemen, if you're looking back to that group, or if you're looking more like the biblical standpoint of things, like we were tribal people. Like there was never this person that was just like, they were the one that got everything done.
Right.
And so and even as entrepreneurs, you have a team, and you're only successful if you're helping your team be successful. And so I think leaning into that tribal mentality of what is my role on this current bus or this vehicle or in this tribe. And you can't have everybody on the team be a LeBron. Everybody on the team can't be a Michael Jordan. Like every Michael Jordan needs a Scottie Pippen. Every Pippen needed a Jordan. Every Shaq needed a Kobe. Every Kobe needed a Shaq. Like LeBron needed Dwayne Wade and needed Kyrie. Like they needed each other. Steph needed Draymond Green and Klay Thompson. Like every tribe needs people to be in their role and to play their role. And so I think that in this job, in sales and career, just in growth in general, you can't rush. Don't rush the process. Like learn what you're supposed to learn, be open to learning, and enjoy that space. And I think Steve Jobs said it best. Like, and I'll say that if the company you're working for now is paying you fairly, and a lot of times more than fairly, because you're a sales guy, you're getting paid more than fairly, because there's other people in the company that would kill to have your pay and your compensation. But
Right.
if they're keeping their commitments to you, they're paying you, they're giving you opportunities for growth, like, first of all, be loyal, don't jump around. Like, if they're not keeping their commitments, or there's bigger upside or bigger opportunity, like, have the courage to talk to your management about it and your managers and your leaders and say, like, these other opportunities are there, but because you guys have treated me good, like, let's talk through this. And like, don't leverage and don't threaten. Like, just don't play the games that people are known for playing the game in the industry. Because I've seen people jump from company to company, and they're at their sixth company, where I've been at one company in 17 years, and they are still where I was 8-9 years ago, leading for the summer. They have 20, 30 guys to their name. They're not where they're at. And so the grass is, you hear it, grass is greener where you water it. And if the grass looks greener on the other side, sometimes it's fake. You know, sometimes it's artificial turf.
Yep.
And I'd much rather know what I'm growing, what I'm planting, what I'm weeding, what I'm watering. And I didn't rush the process. But back to the Steve Jobs thing, was Steve Jobs said, when you wake up more days not loving what you're doing than you did loving what you're doing, that's life telling you it's time to move on. Like, and that was his commencement speech at Stanford University. And so for me, it's like, yeah, will I be at Aptive forever? I don't know. Probably not. You know, if I'm thinking realistically, but like, am I here? Do I still feel like I'm impactful? Yes. Do I still feel like I make a difference? 100%. Are they still paying me fairly and effectively? 100%. Like, I love what I do, and I love who I work with, who I work for, who I can impact way more days than I don't. But I will be honest, say I don't love my job every day. Do you love your job every day?
No.
No. But I love the lifestyle it can give me. I love my kids and my wife and the what this job provides to them. But if there comes a point in my life where I don't like my job more than I like it, I'm going to transition away. But I'm not going to rush that sooner than I need to, because I need to be an entrepreneur,
Right.
or because I need a title, or because I need some sort of validation, because nobody cares.
Nope.
The likes, shares, reposts, comments, like it's all fake. And so I enjoy the process and don't rush it.
Love it. Love it, dude. That was wonderful. So if our listeners want to, follow you or connect with you in any kind of way, where can
Yeah.
they find you?
Instagram primarily. I'm in LinkedIn too. I'm getting more active on LinkedIn. So Kyle Nielsen, Aptive, I pop up. And then you can follow me at The Great Elbow on Instagram. And dumb nickname from when I was little.
Just like it sounds, The Great
The
Elbow.
TheGreaTelbow. And it's not because I'm a wrestler or have like some sort of really strong arm. It was because of my big nose elbow on my face when I was little. But yeah, The Great Elbow, and then at the NBA Elf.
Love it. Love it. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you, dude. This is fun.